They read your face, but not your field. That ache you named loneliness isn't a flaw. It's a filter. The veil doesn't punish, it curates. It lifts you out of rooms where your spirit keeps apologizing for being bright and places you where signal, not noise, can hear you. If you've ever felt your own voice thinning to fit a conversation that had no room for truth, that wasn't weakness. It was protection. The moment you stopped translating your soul into small talk, the current changed. Gossip grew heavy, casual, cynicism tasted metallic, and a quiet sentence rose inside you: do not dilute to relate. Hold it like a voltage is lost in imitation. You weren't built to echo the room. You were wired to retune it by staying whole. Not superior, sovereign. There is a cost to shrinking that your body remembers, even when your mind forgets. It's the tightness after you nod at what you don't believe. The hollow after you laugh at what doesn't feel kind. That is the translation tax. Paid in clarity, paid in peace. The veil shows up the moment you refuse to keep paying. It is not a wall, it is a wise threshold. On one side, the appetite of the crowd. On the other, the assignment you were born carrying. When people say, "You've changed," the truth is simpler. You stopped negotiating with your own frequency. Watch how different doors behave. The ones you begged to open go silent. And then another door appears. No handle, no hinges, just a way made of recognition. Invitations arrive that feel like memory. Strangers speak like old friends. Alignment replaces explanation. Understand this gently. You are not misunderstood. You are miscategorized by the unready. Let them file you where they need to. The veil files you where you're needed. Where you're needed, honesty is oxygen, and purpose is gravity. You will notice how your stillness says more than your biography ever could. People who once dismissed you will begin to measure their words, not because you became louder, but because you became precise. Precision carries its own weather. It cools the heat of confusion. It warms the cold of detachment. Precision is not hardness. It is mercy without leakage. You will feel the map beneath the map. Crowds move in patterns, calling moves in lines. One line in you refuses to bend, and that is mercy too. It keeps you from the slow erosion of self. It keeps you from decorating cages and calling it comfort. It keeps you from performing versions of you that fit today and betray tomorrow. The veil protects your future from your habit of pleasing. It will seem like distance at first. Then you'll realize distance isn't absence. It's alignment space. In alignment space, your prayers sound like decisions, and your decisions sound like peace. In alignment space, you don't chase sentences to explain yourself. You carry a presence that explains you before you speak. Do not mistake less company for less compassion. Compassion does not always require proximity. Sometimes compassion is a boundary that prevents harm. Sometimes compassion is silence that refuses to feed what is false. Sometimes compassion is blessing people to walk their road while you honor yours. You can love without leaving your station. You can forgive without forfeiting your frequency. You can wish everyone well and still not go back to where you kept disappearing. There is a myth that belonging means being surrounded. Real belonging is being surrounded by truth. One voice of truth in your life is a crowd. One moment of truth inside your chest is a city. When you accept that, approval loses its throne. You stop auditioning for rooms that dim the lights and you start tending the lamp that never asks you to shrink. This is what maturity sounds like in the soul. I will not trade clarity for access. When that vow settles, watch how your days organize themselves. The right conversations grow roots. The right work grows wings. The right silence grows fruit. You may feel grief, let it pass through. Your grieving costumes that no longer carry you, corridors you outgrew, versions of yourself that helped you survive, and now must rest, honor them, thank them. Then let them return to dust. You are not abandoning your past. You are releasing what cannot breathe at your altitude. Altitude is not arrogance. It is assignment. Lighthouses don't descend to calm the storm. They hold beam. If you descend, you drown with the boats you were built to guide. If you stand, you serve. If you stand exact, you become a map others can trust. And yes, you will be misread by some. Let it happen. The veil is a mercy for them too. It spares them from carrying truths their season cannot hold. You do not need to sharpen yourself into argument. You do not need to bleed your edges to appear gentle. Gentleness is not the absence of edge. It is the absence of harm. Keep your edge holy for cutting lies away from love. Keep your voice steady for building what lasts. Keep your presence clean for the sake of the work you haven't seen yet. Listen closely. The world that felt a size too small was never the world. It was the costume. The seam just popped. That sound you hear is not something breaking. It's something beginning. An invisible network hums beneath the surface of your life. No logos, no slogans, just resonance. When you stand at your exact signal, the grid lights up. You feel it as timely names, timely paths, timely peace. You are not late. You are on code. And code has a clock of its own. So if tonight feels narrow, don't shrink. Stand exact. Let the old labels fall like husks. Let the old permissions expire. Let the old rooms keep their echoes. The signal that brought you here is ancient and clean, and it has one request that sounds like a remembering. Stop asking for permission to be precise. You'll notice how calm it is when you do. Calm like a harbor, calm like a verdict, calm like a gate that knows who it opens for. This is the first clarity. Separation isn't exile, it's assignment. In the next part, we'll step deeper into that assignment. How being unreadable to the unready keeps your light from being spent on fires that do not warm, and how sovereignty turns silence into strength without dimming your mercy. You weren't pushed to the edge. You were placed on the cliff with a lantern. That's the difference, exile says. You're out. Assignment whispers. You're posted. The mind hears silence and calls it punishment. The soul feels the same silence and calls it clearance. A runway without crowd noise. A corridor where messages arrive unblurred. When the rooms you once chased stop answering, it isn't rejection, it's redirection. The path didn't vanish. It narrowed to fit your honesty. And honesty, when it stops apologizing, becomes architecture. You start to notice the ground beneath you is not brittle, it's design. Every restraint that felt like a closed door reveals itself as a guardrail that kept you from falling into smaller lives. Here's the paradox. The crowd rarely understands. Your distance is not disdain. You can love people deeply without living inside their weather. You can bless a city without moving back into its noise. You can be generous without donating your center. The heart that refuses to collapse is not cold. It is clear. Clarity knows when to hold, when to release, when to pray quietly. Instead of explaining loudly, it knows that some bonds are strengthened by silence, and some illusions are broken by it. You learned this the hard way. Every time you edited your truth to keep a table calm, the table stayed calm. But you didn't. The check came due later, paid in fatigue, in doubt, in that strange feeling of being present but not placed. Separation arrived because your spirit refused to keep paying that tax. Call it what it is: mercy. Mercy for your calling. Mercy for their timing. Mercy for the work neither of you should be carrying yet. When mercy takes the wheel, detours appear that no map predicted, and yet every turn feels remembered. Listen closer to the physics beneath the poetry. Signals either harmonize or they interfere. When two waves cannot align, lowering yours does not create harmony. It creates interference inside you. That inner interference is expensive. Creativity dims, discernment fogs, and the future feels far. But when you keep your signal exact, without boasting, without hardness, the space around you sorts itself. Some stories exit. Some souls step forward. Some storms pass without requiring your entry. You remain a lighthouse, unchanged by spray, unprovoked by thunder. Simply doing what light does: be steady. People will try to define you by access. How reachable, how available, how constantly on. But access is not the same as witness. Many can access your image, few can witness your essence. The veil protects that essence from being traded like a souvenir. It says, "Let those who read with care approach." This isn't secrecy, it's stewardship. Rare ink doesn't sit in the rain. Holy words don't shout in markets. Value is quiet, not because it is timid, but because it is true. When you stop campaigning for understanding, another current becomes audible. The invisible network. No slogans, no badges, just alignment. You'll feel it in the timing of conversations, in the way certain faces soften without you performing, in the doors that open as if by sentence you never said out loud. That's the network responding to consistency, not perfection. Consistency. The vow beneath your breath. I will not trade clarity for access. Pings across the grid like light across a calm sea. Others answer without knowing why. This is how separated souls find each other, not by chasing, but by holding. Your separation you are not asked to be everywhere. You are asked to be precise. Precision is not a sharp tongue. It is a clean presence. A presence that doesn't ridicule, doesn't retaliate, doesn't rehearse arguments in the shower. It simply refuses to pretend. Refusal to pretend is not rebellion. It is reverence. Reverence for what is sacred in you and sacred in them, because truth delivered before its season can become harm, and truth delivered in its season becomes healing. Your distance keeps the season honest. There will be voices that call this pride. Let them. Pride demands applause. Sovereignty doesn't require it. Pride needs witnesses to feel tall. Sovereignty can kneel and remain whole. Pride argues, sovereignty chooses. Pride is fueled by attention. Sovereignty is fed by alignment. You know which one steadies your breath. You know which one lets you sleep. You know which one lets you wake without bargaining with yourself. And yes, grief visits, not for what was false, but for what was familiar. Let it pass through like a dignified guest. Give it water, give it a chair. Don't give it your keys. When it rises, remind your heart. We are not losing people. We are losing versions. Versions of us that needed certain rooms to survive. Thank them, and then release them to history. The future is not built by dragging altars from the old temple. It is built by keeping the flame and leaving the ashes. In this appointment, because that's what it is, you'll learn the art of measured speech. Not code to confuse, but layers to protect. One sentence, two depths, for the unready, kindness for the ready. Keys, not dual faces, single truth, calibrated delivery. It is possible to be simple without being shallow, to be profound without being cryptic. The measure is love, love that refuses spectacle, love that chooses usefulness over noise. You will also learn the dignity of incomplete narratives. Some people will only ever hold a page of your book. Do not force them to carry the whole volume. A page can still bless them. A page can still point north. A page delivered clean invites the next chapter at its appointed time. Trust the author, trust the edit, trust the pace. No algorithm can rush. If you need a sentence to hold in the dark hour, let it be this: I am stationed, not stranded. Say it softly. Watch how the room changes. Inside first, outside. Stationed means your absence from certain circles is presence in your post. Stationed means you are answerable to purpose, not pressure. Stationed means you take counsel from peace, not panic. Stationed means you can be gentle without being moved, firm without being cruel, exact without becoming hard. And when the old world tests your stance, because it will, remember the quiet oath you made when you stopped diluting. No more trading signal for safety. Safety purchased by self-erasure isn't safety. It's a slow forgetting. Your life is not a campaign for unanimous approval. It is a covenant with the truth you were entrusted to carry. Keep that covenant. Guard it with patience. Water it with humility. Shield it from theatrics. Let your yes be a foundation, and your no be a fence that doesn't wound. This is the assignment emerging from your separation: to remain whole in a world that monetizes fragments, to remain kind in a climate that rewards outrage, to remain clear when confusion pays better, to remain faithful when novelty shouts louder, not as a performance, not as a brand, as a lineage of integrity moving quietly through your days. If you've heard yourself in these lines, you already know. The cliff is not a punishment. It's a lighthouse balcony, and the lantern in your hand, it isn't borrowed. It's yours. Keep it lit, without spectacle, without apology, without hurry. In the next part, we'll name the quiet thieves of sovereignty, how imitation drains voltage, how flattery counterfeits belonging, and how to step back into clean power without turning your heart to stone. Power rarely leaves in a thunderstorm. It leaks in a drizzle. You don't notice the loss at first. The room still smiles, the day still moves, the world still claps on cue. But somewhere inside, a light that used to stand on its own starts checking mirrors. That is how sovereignty slips, not by force, but by forgetting. So let's name the quiet thieves, gently, precisely, so the veil can keep you whole without turning your heart to stone. The first thief is imitation, the costume that feels safe because it's familiar to the crowd. Imitation is not admiration. It's a loan you never finish paying. It trades your voltage for predictability and calls the receipt relatability. You sense it in phrases that don't taste like you, in gestures that belong to a different lineage, in the way your spirit sighs after you perform acceptable. Imitation can win rooms and still lose you. Remember, echo is loud, origin is lasting. The second thief is flattery, sugar on the tongue, rust on the blade. Flattery is not love. It is leverage wearing perfume. It tells you you're special, so you'll be useful. It crowns you quickly, so it can claim you quietly. Real honor doesn't tug at your sleeve. Real honor gives you room to breathe, to question, to say no without penalty. If praise requires your compliance, it isn't praise. It's a purchase order. The third thief is urgency, the siren of false fires. Urgency poses as purpose, waving red flags to pull you off your post. It says, right now or never, and hopes you forget that truth is never allergic to time. Purpose can move fast, yes, but it never panics. Urgency drains discernment, purpose deepens it. When the noise demands instant replies, sovereignty remembers that silence is not delay. It is due diligence. The fourth thief is conflict. Bait, the performance that turns your focus into fuel for someone else's storm. There are arguments that sharpen truth and arguments that sell tickets. The first asks for clarity, the second asks for spectacle. If the conversation requires you to shrink compassion to win, it is not a conversation. It is a carnival. Your calling is not to juggle knives in every market that whistles. The fifth thief is nostalgia, the museum of soft focus memories that edits out the cost. Nostalgia tells you the old rooms were warm because they were right. Often they were warm because you were sweating to fit. It will offer you yesterday's chair at today's price. Smile kindly at the curator. Then step back into the present. The living path doesn't live in exhibit halls. The sixth thief is spectacle, the glitter that tries to buy your depth. Spectacle wants you visible more than valuable. It loves what can be measured and fears what must be met. There is nothing wrong with lights until they demand your integrity as a fee. Sovereignty can stand on a stage while keeping its altar intact, but it will never let the stage replace the altar. If attention asks you to amputate nuance, decline the surgery. The seventh thief is ambiguity fog, the blur that pretends to be mystery. True mystery enlarges the heart, fog exhausts it. Fog keeps everything kind of, almost, perhaps. So no one has to commit change or tell the truth. The veil isn't fog. It's a filter. It doesn't obscure to confuse. It shields to preserve. Where the fog steals edges, the veil protects essence. The eighth thief is self-accusation, the inner prosecutor who thinks cruelty is honesty. It presents as rigor, but functions as sabotage. You cannot shame a soul into radiance. Correction without compassion creates performers, not pilgrims. When the inner verdict refuses to admit new evidence, it's not justice. It's jail. Sovereignty doesn't flatter the self, and it doesn't flog it either. It tells the truth the way a surgeon holds a scalpel, to heal, not to humiliate. The ninth thief is comparison economics, the marketplace where value is set by proximity to trends. Comparison reduces destiny to a scoreboard and calls it strategy. But your assignment isn't priced by volume, it's proven by fruit. Quiet, durable, season after season. The invisible network doesn't check rankings, it checks resonance, and resonance cannot be outsourced. The 10th thief is false empathy, kindness that spends your center to buy short-term peace. Real mercy does not empty you to prove it is mercy. Real mercy refuses to become a ladder for cycles that break the very people it tries to rescue. Boundaries aren't a lack of love. They are the form of love that keeps love honest. Without shape, even devotion becomes spillage. And then there is exhaustion disguised as honor. The cult of tireless. Tireless looks noble. It leaves altars unattended. Any path that demands you forget your source will soon demand you forget yourself. Work that is truly yours will require sacrifice. Yes, but not the kind that empties the soul of its prayer. There is a difference between pouring out and leaking. Pouring out is chosen, leaking is coerced. You'll notice how these thieves collaborate. Imitation invites flattery. Flattery inflames urgency. Urgency drags you into conflict. Bait conflict makes you nostalgic for easier rooms. Nostalgia sells you spectacle. Spectacle thickens fog. Fog empowers self-accusation. Accusation drives comparison. Comparison counterfeits empathy. And false empathy justifies exhaustion. By the time the circuit completes, sovereignty is paying rent in a house it owns. Naming the circuit breaks it. Quietly, cleanly. What protects you isn't hardness. It's hierarchy, truth above image, calling above calendar, essence above echo. When the order is right, the thieves lose leverage. They can knock, they cannot negotiate. You are not required to hate the crowd to love your post. You are not required to argue with noise to honor signal. You are not required to be everywhere to be effective. Presence is not a volume knob. It is a vow. And when doubt returns, as it does to faithful hearts, remember, the veil is not a prison. It is a greenhouse. It keeps delicate growth from harsh weather until it can withstand the field. You are not hiding. You are ripening. You are not withholding. You are withholding leakage. There is a season when roots are louder than fruit. Listen there, in that hidden choir, courage learns to sing without microphones. Carry this line forward like a seal. I will not trade signal for safety, nor truth for theater, nor compassion for collapse. Let it sit on your tongue until it seasons every sentence. Let it travel through your posture until rooms know your stance. Before you let it dwell in your decisions until the invisible network feels the ping and answers with its own steady light. In the next part, we'll move from thieves to architecture. How to build an inner structure that doesn't need applause to stand. How to honor timing without idling your destiny. And how to keep your clean power warm, human, and impossible to counterfeit. What remains after the noise is gone is not performance. It's architecture. The house that stands in every weather is built from what we chose when no one was watching. We began with the veil, learned that separation is assignment, exposed the quiet thieves of sovereignty, and now we build, not with spectacle, not with panic, with order, with mercy. With truth that does not need to shout to be undeniable. Architecture begins where imitation ends. When you stop auditioning for rooms that shrink you, a foundation appears, truth over image. Image is hungry, truth is nourished. Image keeps score, truth keeps faith. From that foundation, the beams rise, peace over hurry, because real purpose doesn't bargain with fear, mercy with shape. Because love without boundaries is leakage, not generosity. Witness over access, because being everywhere is not the same as being seen. When these beams lock, the roof is set. A steady presence that neither flatters nor fights for survival. A presence that simply is clean, human, and impossible to counterfeit. You will feel the relief of order. The heart quiets when it is not for sale. The mind clears when it no longer negotiates with fog. The body eases when it isn't dragging altars from old temples to furnish new rooms. And your days, watch this, begin to gather around meaning instead of momentum. Fewer doors, deeper rooms, fewer words, fuller sentences, fewer faces, truer companions. This is not isolation, this is precision. Precision is not a sharp tongue. It's a faithful spine. Carry your refrain like a seal. I am stationed, not stranded. It means your distance from certain storms is devotion, not indifference. It means your no protects your yes. It means you can be soft without being moved, firm without being cruel, exact without losing warmth. There is a way to be unshakable and still remain kind. That way is the middle of your calling. Neither leaning into flattery nor bracing against mockery, simply standing where light does its work. Remember the invisible network, the quiet lattice under everything. It doesn't respond to volume. It answers consistency. When you keep your signal honest, doors you never knocked begin to open, and paths you couldn't find begin to find you. Not because you chased, because you stood. Not because you argued, because you witnessed. There is a dignity to this path. You bless without bending your core. You forgive without forfeiting your center. You love without leaving your... Let the past be the past. We honor the versions of us that helped us survive. We do not crown them monarch of the future. We bless the rooms that could hold us then. We don't force today's soul into yesterday's furniture. What is real will remain. What was costume will fold. What is yours will recognize you by your steadiness, not your speed. If you heard yourself in these lines, if something in you felt recognized rather than persuaded, then you already know. This message is not marketing, it's memory. You didn't arrive by accident. You arrived by resonance, and resonance is a promise that does not fail. Now, if this transmission protected your clarity, join the circle that keeps it lit. Subscribe, so these messages meet you on time. Not loud, but exact. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter in this series, each one built to strengthen your sovereignty without hardening your heart. Comment, I stand exact, not as a slogan, as a signal to the network that you're on post and present. And if one person came to mind, Simone, who keeps dimming to be accepted, share this with them. Quiet light travels far. You are not here to fit a pattern that breaks you. You are here to be a pattern that frees you. And by mercy, frees others. Guard your peace. Keep your voice clean. No trading signal for safety. No trading truth for theater. No trading compassion for collapse. The path ahead will ask for courage. Yes, but it will repay you in a currency the world cannot counterfeit. Inner certainty, stay sovereign, stay gentle, stay lit. Our separation is temporary. Our mission is enduring. When you stand exact, the way opens. And when the way opens, you are never walking alone.